Kitco News special coverage of the Future Blockchain Summit is brought to you by Coin Payments, crypto payments made easy.
We are in Dubai at the Future Blockchain Summit, the Middle East's first and largest blockchain and cryptocurrency convention. I'm Michelle Makori, and I'm pleased to be joined by Florian Grummes, the Managing Director at Midas Touch Consulting. Florian, nice to see you.
Hi Michelle, nice to meet you. Thanks for having me.
All right, good to have you with us, Florian. Last year, you had the pleasure of chatting with my co-anchor, David Lin, at this conference. And you quite correctly predicted that gold would be the best performing asset of 2022. Now, so far you're correct. Gold is down around 8%, but outperforming the S&P and the NASDAQ, which are down about 20%, certainly outperforming Bitcoin, which is down around 54%, give or take. What is your outlook for the remaining 2 months? Do you stick by that? Do you see anything derailing that forecast?
Well, I told David in July already that I'm still bullish the US dollar. I think we are in a liquidity crisis, and I think that this will unfortunately not change anytime soon. So most of the asset classes are in a bear market, and they will likely remain under pressure, generally speaking.
So you no longer see gold as the best performing asset for 2020?
Gold will continue to outperform the stock market and Bitcoin and the other cryptos simply because it's a safe haven, old school, boring but good investment, and people need it. And so it will do better than everything else. But against the dollar, it will still remain challenging. Okay. It can always pop a little bit. The situation is so oversold in all markets. You can always have a quick short squeeze. But I don't think the bigger picture is changing anytime soon.
All right, and the bigger picture for cryptos is looking rather bleak.
Yes.
We are very much in a crypto winter.
Right.
Is there anything you see happening that can get Bitcoin out of this range that we're in right now, going between 20 to 18 and a half, more or less? What's going to take to get us out of this crypto winter?
Oh, it would take a lot, I think. And I don't see any events or anything happening anytime soon. I guess it's going to be more like creeping sideways somewhere between 18 and 20K. Again, also Bitcoin can always have a quick bounce, because it's also oversold, but at some point I expect rather that this 18K support level will break, and then we could actually lose quickly another 30, 40, 50%. And I see the 10K level, there's an open gap in the Bitcoin future, slightly below 10K. That's right now my main expectation.
So 10K is your new support line for Bitcoin, or you see that breaking as well?
That would be the worst case, then we're gonna go back to 6K. But right now, I think 10K is already painful enough.
Wow. So, look, Florian, previous Bitcoin conferences this year, people were talking about 100K Bitcoin. Then we were like 20K, that's a support line.
Right.
Now you're telling me 10K, possibly even 6K as a Bitcoin support line that you see.
Yes. No, we are in a crypto winter, as you rightly said. And they have always been painful. The crypto sector is a boom and bust sector like no other. So you have these a few thousand% on the upside, but you also have these retracements of 80, 90%. Most of the altcoins are down 90, 95, even some 99%. And it's always been like this, and unfortunately it's the same this time. And it's needed because there's been so much scam and so much bad projects in the sector. And we have to have a time where they are all basically are getting weeded out. So that's the process we're in right now. It's very painful, I understand, especially for people who are fully invested, hodling through this winter. But at the end of it will hopefully bring a new bull market at some point. Usually those crypto winters last 20 to 27 months. So we are in, roughly speaking, a year, maybe a little bit less. So expect another half a year at least, maybe a year. And then the Bitcoin halving in 2024, I think, will bring some light and it's maybe the start of a new bull market.
Okay, let's focus back. So firstly, we need to cleanse some of the irrational exuberance, if you will, from the markets. We're seeing a Bitcoin 6K support line is not beyond the realms of possibility, is what you're saying.
It's my worst case right now. I wouldn't rule it out. I think 10K is probably what's going to happen, and then we're going to see a nice bounce, a recovery rally, and maybe then another test of the 10 to 15K range like a double low at some point, and that would be then the final end of the crypto winter. But it still takes time. I don't think it's happening anytime soon.
We do have the Bitcoin halving in around 562 days, give or take, May
Yes.
2024.
Right.
Do you see Bitcoin able to hit back its all-time high by then of 69,000?
No,
No.
by then no. But if this whole crypto sector can recover like it should or did in the past, then yes, once the halving has happened, the whole sector very likely will be in a new bull market, and then it's a question of time until we take out the all-time high. But it will take some more time. And you have to also understand in the bigger picture, Bitcoin has been going up since 2009 relentlessly in the end of the day, right? Very volatile, sharp pullbacks, but it went up like crazy. And maybe it takes a little bit more this time to digest this big move over the last 12, 13 years, right? It could take a few more years maybe, who knows? And fundamentally speaking, it would be more regulation, of course. That could be basically preventing a real new bull market. But this is all early out. We're in a bear market right now. We're in a liquidity crisis, and I think people should really be patient.
We'll get back to patience being a virtue. But you're saying that you see regulation as a negative for Bitcoin, because we've had a lot of people come on the show saying that regulation will create clarity, that will open the way for institutional investors to get in, and that it should be a positive for Bitcoin, and some of the larger altcoins, Bitcoin and Ethereum at least, would benefit from clearer regulation. You think on the contrary?
Yeah, it's a two-sided sword, I think. On the one hand, yes, it's needed, more regulation, more clarity, as you said rightly. But at the same time, I don't think governments want to see Bitcoin succeeding. And if this whole talk about CBDCs, I mean, we have to expect that they're coming with something in the next few years. And if that's happening, we're all going to be digital slaves of the central banks. And I don't see the crypto sector being strong enough and united enough at the moment to really put something against that. Instead, it's so fragmented. As I said already, there's so much scam and so much bad players and projects that are just not good in the market. And there has been so much greed and so much speculation. So I hope that at some point we will find this way towards decentralization and DeFi, because it could take mankind into a better future. But so far the promise has not been fulfilled, I would have to say. And if governments want to regulate Bitcoin really hardcore, it would mean, yes, Bitcoin, the network itself is decentralized. You could trade it via satellites with some other freaks, but not the vast majority of people will be able to do that. So we are far away from a mass adoption.
So you still see regulation as an existential threat to Bitcoin, especially considering the fact that, as you say, governments are going to be pushing for central bank digital currencies, and Bitcoin perhaps threatens that agenda.
Yes, it does. It does. And it's the big question. I mean, let's see who's in the end of the day faster, but what's going on right now, we are for sure in the end game of this financial system. And if the Fed at some point will be forced to pivot next year maybe, then we are back on the road to a cracker boom, to hyperinflation. If they continue to use the sledgehammer and push interest rates higher like they are doing since 10 months, it's going to be a big depression like the 1930s.
What do you mean we're in the end game of this financial system?
Well, 50 years since the end of the gold standard, massive balance sheet expansions, massive printing of money. Any problem basically has been kicked down the road by printing more money. Never ever has any politician or central bank coming up with some real solution here. They've been only buying time. Now we have high inflation for the first time in many decades. And I think it shows that this fiat money system is not working anymore. And that's why the central banks are so much under pressure to come up with their CBDCs. If they manage to be faster than the crypto world, so to speak, then we end up, as I said, a digital slave. So.
But a CBDC is still a fiat currency.
Yes, exactly. It is. It is. But it's controlled.
But it's going to be positioned as though it's not, is what you're trying to say.
Right. I mean, most of the people have no clue about the financial system. They have no clue what's actually going on. They are too busy with their little 9 to 5 life, and which is totally understandable, by the way. But they are trying to position the CBDCs as some form of cryptocurrencies. But at the end of the day, it's the same money that we have already, given out by the central banks directly, and then it's controllable money similar to what they have in China with the social credits. And I think it's a very unfortunate future for all of us.
So, I mean, as we said, central bank digital currency is just a form of digital fiat, although governments may use this as a way to reposition a reset. If we're seeing hyperinflation and we're seeing a lot of cracks in the traditional financial system, the theory has been put out there that that's how governments are going to say, well, we're offering you central bank digital currencies as some kind of reset, but essentially it's not a reset at all.
Exactly.
And we're going to become digital slaves was the term that you used. Expand on that hellish scenario.
Well, I mean, if some unelected central bankers can basically create money out of thin air and then track how you spend your money, where you spend it, and allow you to spend it or not allow you to spend your hard-earned money. Also dictate what type of interest rates you're going to earn, that would dictate what you can do with it, and track any way that you spend your money. I think it's not a very nice outlook for all of us, and it's actually quite the contrary to what the mankind has been working over the last few centuries, right?
Right. Well, yeah, central bank digital currencies, complete lack of privacy, total government control, even easier to create more money.
Right.
But that's exactly where Bitcoin is supposed to come in as a solution. Bitcoin is supposed to be the antithesis to the prospect of fiat currency, particularly now central bank digital currencies, which is a digital fiat.
Right.
So wouldn't Bitcoin benefit if CBDCs start to take off? Wouldn't more people want to then put their money in Bitcoin, which, as we know, has a limited supply and isn't subject to many of the concerns of fiat currency?
Yeah, I mean, you need a critical mass or a threshold of people that become really suspicious to the CBDCs. And the unfortunate truth is that most people, financially speaking, are in such a dire situation where they have to run to make enough money just until the end of the month, right? To come up with their payments. Many people have a mortgage. There's not a lot of choices that you have in such a situation. And Bitcoin has been a very volatile investment, which also made it very difficult for people to hold on to it. So yes, there was always the hope in the idea of Bitcoin, and I always loved it for that. But we have to see how it plays out, because we are now more than 11 years into the inception of Bitcoin, and so far we don't really see mass adoption. What we see is people trading it, holding it. The Lightning Network is still not really catching up, and there's been so much fighting within the crypto world, basically. So many different concepts. On the one hand, it's good. I believe in a free market and everybody can try out things. But I think also a lot of energy and money and time has been lost on all these stupid fights between who has the better protocol, which token, which network is better, which tokenomics are better, etc., etc.
So have you given up on the vision of Bitcoin, on the ideology of Bitcoin?
No, I have not given up on it. So we are in a crypto winter right now. I take things more easy. I don't need to trade the whole time. Instead, I think the sidelining and like being patient and just waiting. You don't need to chase anything right now, because I think stocks will be lower at some point over the next few months.
But in terms of Bitcoin being a solution to the problem of fiat,
Yes.
many Bitcoin detractors are saying that the Bitcoin narrative as a store of value asset, as a hedge against inflation, is proving to be false, at least in this current environment, because it hasn't done any of that. Does that narrative still hold?
Well, one Bitcoin is still one Bitcoin, right? And the same is true for 1 ounce of gold is still 1 ounce of gold. If you constantly check it in your fiat currency, yeah, it's a volatile ride. If you just focus on the fact you still have the Bitcoin or you still have the ounce of gold in your hands, you don't have to worry too much about it. Unless you're using margin and you trade very speculative with it, that's a difference.
But are you still buying the use case of Bitcoin
Yes.
as a hedge against inflation and as a store of value, even though it hasn't proven to be successful at that in this current environment?
Yes, over the last
So far.
10 months, it has not proven to really be helpful. But of course, if you zoom out over the last 12 years, it's still the best investment you could have done. And it has actually hedged you against all this inflation that has been showing up over the last 2 years, because Bitcoin has been pricing it in all this development long before it actually showed up in the data, right? So I still buy into that. I'm just a little bit more cautious and relaxed, I would say, about the markets right now. I feel like I don't need to chase anything right now.
Where do you see Bitcoin in 12 years' time then?
In 12 years.
Yes.
It's the big question. If we figure out a way that Bitcoin can continue to prosper, and I think the Middle East here has a big benefit in helping it, then I think it can be easily trade a few $100,000 or even a few $1 million, because by then likely the Federal Reserve would have had to print a lot of dollars out of thin air. However, if they continue with their CBDCs and really manage to bring us into digital slavery, I don't know if Bitcoin plays any role anymore. So we really have to see. It's a question. It's a very important question for mankind that we're facing over the next 2 years, and I wouldn't take that lightly.
An important question for mankind in terms of the government overreach of central bank digital
In terms
currencies.
of freedom and where we're going to move, right? Because money is an essential part of our life, of our society, of our interactions, and if it's dictated by a few unelected central bankers, it's a very, very bad outlook.
Do you think that there's enough awareness about this?
No.
It doesn't seem as though people realize what's at stake
I don't
here.
think people are not aware of it. No,
Right.
not at all, unfortunately.
So again, it's exactly the case.
It's a question of awareness.
For Bitcoin,
You're
but
absolutely
it's
right.
exactly the user case for Bitcoin as a counter to all this, for Bitcoin and for gold
Right.
as well,
Right.
or for both.
Yeah, for both. I've been always an advocate of both. I never bought into that argument between either gold or Bitcoin. I always said you want to have both.
I'm like,
I think
why
it's-
choose? Yes.
I think they complement each other beautifully. Gold, physically, analog, real stuff, 5,000 year track record, untraceable, doesn't need energy, doesn't need internet.
Right.
And Bitcoin, new technology, decentralized, you can move big amount of money quickly. But it needs free internet, for example, right? And it's also, censorship in internet has increased a lot over the last few years, and it's not stopping that trend. Instead, it's actually increasing or getting even tighter, right?
Let's talk about how both of these assets are impacted by the Fed and the strong US dollar. Because last week we had a strong jobs report coming out of the US, unemployment at 3.5%. The US economy still adding more jobs, slowing down, but still showing resilience. And that's heightened the case for an even more hawkish Fed, which brought down gold and brought down Bitcoin.
Right.
But yet you expect that the Fed will eventually have to pivot here.
Yes, eventually, yes, but I think it will happen next year. And it will
Next
happen,
year.
yeah, at some point next year. It's hard to give you an exact date or anything, but I think it will happen once the financial markets are really starting to implode, and there's probably a big institution or a certain sector of the market imploding, putting such a huge amount of pressure on the Fed that they have to do something. But right now they're still believing in their strategy. They pulled out the sledgehammer, pushing interest rates higher. Initially, it's been the market who basically forced them to increase interest rates due to the high inflation. But they still believe they can continue. The British central bank had already to pivot 2 weeks ago because 2 British pension funds came under severe stress. Let's see how long this can continue. The strong dollar puts stress on everybody in the whole world. We are in a liquidity crisis right now. If they continue like this for a few more months, it's not a good outlook. It's actually, I think the setup in the financial markets is getting more and more dire. And you want to be patient and wait until there is a clear signal that the worst is over.
And what would that signal be? Would that be the Fed pivoting?
That would be the Fed pivoting, or
is that a Fed pause or is that a Fed
I think they will have to
reversal?
make a strong U-turn at some point. Yeah.
Cutting rates? And you anticipate that happening by the second half of 2023?
I would think somewhere in the first or second half. It's hard to tell how. I mean, in a bear market, things can quickly fall apart and intensify, and it could happen actually rather quickly as well. But I think gold will probably be the first one to start pricing in such a move before it actually happens. So I'm looking very closely at the gold market. It's an oversold situation right now. It can always pop a little bit, but if gold can basically recover this $1,800 level, 200-day moving average, that will be a good first signal. And it also depends on the way it does it. So if you remember the last bear market that we experienced this in 2008, it's a long time ago.
Yeah.
Most people have zero experience how to trade and invest in the bear market. And also you didn't have any chance to train your skills over the last 13 years because there was no bear market. So we are in a different setup, new to most market participants right now. But the last time in 2008 and 9, gold was the first one to start turning around. We had a double low in gold at 680. And that happened when the Fed already also started to flood the markets with money. The stock market still needed a few more months until they found the final bottom. Gold went up from 680 to 1920 in the following 3 years. So something similar like this will likely happen this time. I could imagine seeing a double low in gold. Now we had one at 1620, so maybe the market tests it again. Yeah, first half of next year, I think we're going to see some signs that the pivot will happen.
So what is the best asset to be in right now then?
Cash.
Cash.
Dollar.
Well, Ray Dalio has reversed his position. As we know, he used to say cash is trash. He's recently come out and said, I take that back, because he's quite surprised at just how hawkish the Fed has been.
Yes, me too. For me, it wasn't. I didn't thought they could be so hawkish, honestly. But it is what it is. The track record of the Fed is a nightmare, so we can assume they're going to be wrong this time again as well. But it's a question of time until we figure out.
So you expect a hawkish Fed until they can't
break
take it
something.
anymore, they break, and then we're going to see a pivot. So in that context then, what do you think is the best performing asset for 2023? Would it still be the US dollar then?
No, I think
Not if
in
there's a pivot.
2023 we will see the pivot, and I think gold will be the first one to start pricing it in, and then all markets will turn around, and then it's probably again which is the fastest horse, and then Bitcoin has good cards, right? But I right now in that scenario, I strongly stick with gold because it's just such a safe haven asset. It's outside the system. You can, even if you suffer by looking at the price that you paid for your physical ounce, you can take it in your hands. It feels good, it's heavy, it's real stuff. And so I'm a big believer in gold for many years already. It's always been good to me. It helped also in this bear market now, having a large chunk of my money in physical gold. Basically.
And yet we are at a digital conference. We're at
Yes.
a crypto conference. We're at
We
the
are in
end.
the crypto winter. It's unfortunately like that. And I'm sure in 2 years, we're going to talk about all these fancy new projects and all these good outlooks.
Well, here's the thing, Florian. We do have record attendance at the blockchain and crypto conference this year. This despite being in a crypto winter.
Right.
So what does it signal that we have DeFi initiatives, blockchain initiatives continue to grow and take off even with this crypto winter being so chilly? What does that say about the sector at large then?
Well, in my understanding, it tells me that there's still too much hope.
Too much hope.
Yes. So the last crypto winter, I remember being at a conference in Berlin, and I think it was March 2019. 2 years before, there were like 2,000 people. At that conference in March 2019, there were like 50 people. Half of them were with their own booth, angry at the guy who organized the event because there were no people. And then I did a presentation saying I was bullish on Bitcoin at $3,000 or $3,500. It was actually the start of a new bull market. And I remember out of those 10 people attending, half of them left the room. So that was the bottom.
So then they weren't hopeful enough, but now you're saying there's too much hope.
There's still too much hope, I think, yes. So it will still take some more time. Going back to what we said earlier, it needs time to weed out all these bad actors, these scammy players, and also just bad projects that didn't do their homework enough, that basically spent too much the money that they collected.
But ultimately, even in the context of central bank digital currencies and regulation and Bitcoin perhaps not faring so well in the current macro environment, you are still bullish on Bitcoin, just not as bullish. If I may try to summarize your position here.
Again, I'm patiently waiting right now. I think you're going to have a chance to buy at better prices. Very long term, I'm hoping, and I'm still bullish for gold, for Bitcoin. But as I try to lay out, it really depends on enough awareness amongst the people on this planet to stop central bankers from introducing CBDCs.
Stop CBDCs. That's your bottom line message here.
Right. Yes. I mean, if you believe in freedom and if you believe in free markets, if you believe that the swarm intelligence of all of us together, each one of us building its own world, reaping the profits for whatever we risk and how much energy and time, effort we put into something, if you believe in that, and that's actually a concept that you can see in the nature working for millions of years, then you have to be
saying, can CBDCs be
CBDCs.
stopped? I guess it depends on which country and which region, but can CBDCs be stopped? I mean, if we look at the United States, for example.
It has to be done by the people, right? I mean, I don't think there's any political initiative right now that is growing and really trying to stop it. So it's all of us that we have to wake up.
So we need a politician to champion the message of stopping CBDCs, more political awareness behind the perils of CBDCs.
Right.
So stop CBDCs, but in the meantime,
buy gold and Bitcoin.
Buy gold and Bitcoin and be patient.
Be patient and don't use leverage in this environment. Step by step, slowly buying into it. You don't have to chase any latest story at the moment. In a bear market, everything goes down. In a bull market, everything goes up. It's actually that simple.
It's that simple. Well, Florian, thank you for simply breaking it down for us. We will need to continue a more detailed conversation of central bank digital currencies and create more awareness of what exactly it means. We really appreciate you taking the time with us now. Florian Grummes, good to see you. Thanks for being with us.
Pleasure. Thank you very much, Michelle. Pleasure.
Kitco News special coverage of the Future Blockchain Summit is brought to you by Coin Payments, crypto payments made easy.